Hey everyone, Captain Foley and Samuel Calkins are here again,
Hi guys.
welcoming you back to Trek Yards. Today we're looking at the Vulcan Surat class, first seen in the Enterprise Season 1, and we have with us Mr. Doug Drexler, who designed this ship for Enterprise.
I'll never forget it.
So we will be getting the inside scoop on this Vulcan starship from the man himself.
Sorry,
So let's begin.
sorry, I was playing
Cool.
got the model. Anyway, okay, so let's start out.
Listen, you're being too silly. You better cut it out.
Sorry, Doug.
I
He's getting
agree.
carried away, Stuart.
It's time to work now, Samuel. Playtime was 2 minutes ago.
You know,
Okay.
it was like when Patrick Stewart was on TNG in the early years. He was very stodgy and stuffy. And then he like totally lost it after hanging around with the crazy people for a couple of years. He was just as silly as they were.
Cool.
That's what's happening to you, Samuel. After one episode, you're already becoming sillier. Okay, I know we're supposed to talk about the ship.
Okay, so this ship is obviously a Vulcan ship operated by the Vulcan High Command in the 22nd century, so Enterprise era. But it shouldn't be confused by the Surat-class warp sled, which we saw in the motion picture. It's the ship that brought Spock to the Enterprise. But we'll be doing that ship separately, so you'll see it at some point.
As mentioned, this is the Surat class ship. The first one we ever saw was called the Tamur from the episode Breaking the Ice, which took place in the year 2151. It has a length of 350 meters with a top speed of warp 7. An idea for scale, the Constitution class is 289 meters long, and the later Intrepid class was 344 meters. Still, it was a large ship for the era, with the Klingon D5 or D4 and D5 being around 250 meters, and the NX-01 at 225 meters.
So definitely a big ship. So Doug, I mean, how did you approach the scale of the ship, especially compared to the NX-01?
Well, you could figure out the scale by the size of the decks by looking at the windows. And that's your human scale there. Although those windows that we see on the pylon are, I mean, usually a deck is about 11 feet or so. It's kind of like an apartment building. But I would say that these were double the size of an Enterprise deck. They're more like 22 feet. Pretty roomy. And the other thing is that I don't see the ship as being super populated either. You know, Vulcans appreciate their solitude, you know. And I look at it and I can't imagine that there would be more than 150 to 200 people on board.
Wow,
Oh, wow.
But that's just me,
well,
just the way I perceive the Vulcans,
Yeah.
which actually I perceive them differently than we saw them on Enterprise, frankly.
Yeah, so did I, actually. So did my brother, who's a big Vulcan fan.
Well, you know, the Vulcans were cranky, you know, sons of bitches, you know, and they were like the relative that wouldn't, you know, they come for a visit and they don't leave.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't share
And
technology as well. How? Ugh.
Yeah.
We get into that later, too, though.
Yeah. The Vulcans really bothered me. They had a sense of, you know, an air of superiority about them.
Which isn't
and
logical.
I found, yeah, it is. I just found them to be very annoying. I would have done it a totally different way.
So when you were designing the original ship, what made you make the ship so large? Because what made you think a Vulcan science ship or even warship should be that large? Wouldn't the Vulcans maybe they were a small race? Why did they build so big?
Well, I mean, the larger the ship, the greater the, you know, mission envelope. You know, because you've got more labs, you've got more, you know,
Meditation rooms.
technology, meditation rooms, yeah, hot tubs, you know, stuff like that.
Is that now
I mean, you
canon
know, the larger
information,
the
Doug?
ship.
Hot tubs on the Surat class.
Oh, no, oh yes, several decks are hot tubs on the ship, and the bridge is all hot. There's one big hot tub that they all sit in together with a viewing screen on one end. Every time though the turbo lift doors open, the water runs out and they have to refill it.
Do they have candles and stuff, too? Well, they are Vulcans, so they probably have, like, incense and stuff.
Absolutely.
This is a weird
And those
ship.
little sparkly curtains, you know, like Spock had in his quarters and the Rathacon, you know, psychedelic mirrors that have infinity lights in them and stuff like that.
I'm sensing the Vulcans were quite a strange species in your design aesthetic. Hot tubs everywhere.
They should be a strange species. This ship goes on longer missions. You know, it's a ship of the line for the Vulcans. You know, it's not like a survey ship passing through the solar system. You know,
It's the same
it's the
size as an
equivalent.
Intrepid class, and that's a pretty sizable ship, especially compared to Enterprise era.
Yeah, Yeah, but the Vulcans are, I mean, they're so much more advanced than we are. Well, they're more advanced, but not significant, not that greatly advanced, enough to hold it over us.
Mhm.
Anyway, so weapons included on the ship was particle beam emitters and photon torpedoes, or photon torpedoes, depending on. And it was one of the most advanced ships in the Alpha Quadrant. 'Cause obviously, the Vulcans.
Given that this was the first Vulcan ship we saw, how well armed do you envision the Vulcans would be, especially for a warship? Would it be logical to have,
Well, I mean,
this hostility when they should be logical and peaceful?
frankly, to me the idea of Vulcan warship, it doesn't even sound right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of the Earth Federation having warships either. People love battles and space battles and war and stuff like that. It's a little, you have to have conflict.
Mhm.
And I know that Gene's idea was that we fought when we had to defend ourselves. The Enterprise really was not a warship, but it was prepared to handle itself because there were races out there who were hostile. You had to be, significantly armed, otherwise you could end up dinner.
Well, I think one big subplot in Enterprise was their conflict with the Andorians, and they're obviously quite a powerful race as well. So I think it's probably logical to at least have technology to rival their in terms of weaponry.
Oh, absolutely. They have to protect themselves, and I'm sure the Vulcans are probably hated because they're such smartasses.
How did you then see the Vulcan way of approaching each other on board a starship would be, in your mind at least, when you designed the ship?
Approaching each other?
Well, I mean, you say Kirk was more like a military commander. How did you see a Vulcan commander approaching his men, say, on the warship or the science ship?
The thing is that I think that humans, although when they're properly trained, can get the job done, that Vulcan training starts, when they're born. I mean, it's almost Spartan in a way. That it doesn't take a hell of a lot of training to get people, to behave in a very regimented way for Vulcans. I think that with humans, it takes more training to do that. I think, Vulcans go and learn the systems and how the ship works and what the chain of command is. But I think that just because of the way they are, that's just their natural state. They don't have to learn that kind of thing like human beings do.
Ship possessed tractor beam technology, which was considered classified from Earth Starfleet because the Vulcans were kind of assholes way back in the day. This tractor beam emitter was located on the lower section of the primary hull in front of the warp drive engine. The warp engine was a ring-shaped structure, which is quite advanced when compared to Starfleet's Warp 5 designs.
What other technologies did you envision Vulcans at the time having? Maybe holodecks, replicators? We didn't see much on the screen, but what did you envision when you thought of the Vulcan race at that era anyway?
Well, I mean, I think that they were closer in technology to where Kirk and crew were, that they were, significantly advanced compared to us.
So probably a replicator because they have replicators.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, if you have transporter technology, you're going to have replicators. I mean, we have transporter technology on the NX, but it's kind of experimental. So,
could you see them having holodecks or being close? Or is that a bit too far?
Yes, I absolutely. I mean, I think that right now we're not that far from having holodecks.
Anyway, so this vessel, of course, will be outfitted as either a science vessel or a combat cruiser. When outfitted as a science ship, it had a red coloration for its hull and a max speed of warp 6.5. However, when configured as a combat cruiser, it was a copper-colored hull and had a max speed of warp 7. Another vessel of this class I see on the screen is the Nivar, and in 2152 we can see the larger combat cruiser called the Chiron.
So my question is, given that this is the first red starship we see in the Trek universe, chronologically at least, is there any reason for that per se? Was it painted red, or was it using like red materials? Because I know the Vulcans, their planet is red, and a lot of their...
Well, I mean, at that point, it was done strictly for aesthetic value. I mean, Vulcan is red, the skies are red, everything's red, so...
But their blood is not red.
Yeah, that's right. Their blood isn't red. I mean, I know that a lot of times, especially shows like Enterprise, they tend to mute the colors of everything. You look at the original series and the colors are all very bright. Then you go to Enterprise. I mean, I walked in the room one day and looked at Enterprise on the TV and said, "Oh my God, what's wrong with the television? There's no color." And I was like, oh, it's Enterprise. The color is on. Everything was very monochromatic looking.
Yeah.
And so they pushed back all the bright colors. I made the ship a bright red. I think that the ruddier coloration is fine. I think that they probably felt that the very intense red color, and I think I also had it kind of shiny as well, hurts the scale.
Mhm.
Because when you have something that's really big and you pull back from it, there's aerial perspective and stuff in the air that's going to dull down the color of everything. So the larger something is, the further away you get, the more desaturated colors tend to become.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, if you could theorize though, for a purely technical level, why would the ship be red? Purely technical, just
For a technical reason?
Yeah. Why would Vulcans make a red hull, not paint red hull? What do you think?
Well, it completely changes the profile of the warp bubble. Warp fields are very, very affected by color. They're very sensitive to color.
That's why the Bizarre collectors are red, don't you know?
That's exactly
Science.
right. They found that if they made the whole ship red, the ship was able to slip
Warp 7.
on the warp bubble much easier.
So if Enterprise was red, it would have been Warp 7. Doug confirmed.
And red doesn't look red to Vulcans. Red looks white to Vulcans.
Well, that could make
Their
sense,
ships,
actually.
Their ships are. They think our ships are red, and they smell colors too.
Anyway,
You asked.
we're gonna move on to.
It was purely aesthetic. One of the things I might mention that's interesting is that my idea is that when Trip saw the Surak, they'd never seen a Vulcan ship before like that. Everything was kept very secret. So when he saw that pretty much blew him away. And Starfleet engineers and stuff started looking at the ring on the ring-based drive, and we even tried it ourselves, which is why we have that ring-based Enterprise.
The Declaration class, yeah.
Yeah, it's because we saw what the Vulcans were doing. I mean, it's like, look, you've seen pictures of the Soviet space shuttle that never flew, right?
Yeah.
It looks just like the American space shuttle, just like it. So we would do that, and that was the reason that in my mind, why we ended up with ring ships. We saw what they were doing, and we gave it a try ourselves. It didn't work out as well for us as the saucer nacelle configuration did.
I've got a little question about the red again, just before Stuart finishes. So do you think the fact that you made a red Vulcan ship, do you think that was the inspiration for the red ship we saw in the JJ universe? The randomly red spaceship.
I have no idea. I haven't a clue.
Do you want to take credit for that, though?
Well, okay. The NX was in the second movie, I hear.
Yes,
on
as
the
a model.
tabletop.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the only ship that survived the reality shift.
Officially, there was a Constitution class hanging up in Admiral Marcus's office, but that scene was cut. So anyway, we're going to move on to behind the scenes now. Because John Eves, the production illustrator, was busy working on Star Trek Nemesis at the time, it fell to our guest star, Doug Drexler, to design the Timur.
Is that what happened? I can't remember.
For Enterprise. Drexler stated...
That model, hold that up. Hold that closer to the camera. I'm sorry, Stuart.
That's okay.
What really bothers me is that, you see the bottom of the pylon?
Yeah.
That is not supposed to be flat on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be shaped like it's kind of it's a cone. It's without a point. It's supposed to extend down just like the ends of the ship do, but on the bottom. And there's supposed to be a glowing Bussard there. But for some reason, when they rebuilt it at the visual effects house, they decided they didn't like that. So,
it fell to our guest, Doug Drexler, to design the Timur for Enterprise. Drexler stated, coming up with the design was a little bit daunting because in over 600 episodes of Star Trek, the Vulcan ship design was never really established, and it was his task to design the most influential ship design aesthetic of a major race in Star Trek history.
Almost the race, because it's the Vulcans.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for my way of thinking, the three major races on Star Trek were the humans, the Klingons, and the Vulcans. Those were the three most important races, really. And to design I mean, you had the Enterprise and you had the Klingon ship. They're both classic designs, and they're both designed by Matt Jeffries. And the one thing that was important to me that the Vulcan design be significantly its own look, that there's no mistaking it for a Klingon ship. There's no mistaking it for, a Starfleet vessel. Very often when you're cranking out tons and tons of ships, you have ships of the week. It gets to the point where it's hard to they all look the same at a certain point. There's a certain sameness to the design. They all look like
alien.
Yeah, they all look like they came from the same factory,
It's funny because we just talked to Rick Sternbach, and he had designed the one ship that was used about 15 times, just reconfigured.
TNG.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's especially true on TNG because they had to physically build models.
Yeah.
Physically building a model is much more difficult.
It appeared very early in Enterprise, and that would imply that the producers and directors had envisioned that the Vulcans would definitely appear quite a lot in terms of spaceships. So what sort of direction were you given in terms of design? Did they put any...
I wasn't given any direction at all. No. I was given no direction at all. And I don't remember Herman giving me any direction either. I just went and did what I thought, and I based the three designs on things I had seen that we knew about them already, whether it was costume, some of the shapes you could see in the costumes in The Search for Spock, some of the headpieces and things like that. But I was pretty much just left on my own. The thing was that I really wanted, because I saw the Vulcans as being, I felt that they had to have a ship as distinctive as the Federation and the Klingons, and I also wanted it to be a Matt Jeffries design. I thought that it was fitting that whatever design we had for the Vulcans, that it be designed by the same guy who designed the ships for the other two races that are so distinctive that 50 years later, we're still basing ship designs on them.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because my next point is that you want it to be memorable, and so you based it off of an original Matt Jeffries design for Enterprise, which is obviously, as you say, the ring ship. Very simplistic but distinctive, and not overworked. It was clear and recognizable.
Yeah, Matt had done that design. I know he considered it for the Enterprise, but it was also a possible design for a series that Roddenberry wanted to do called Starship that never happened. And then, of course, it ended up on the Rec Deck and Star Trek The Motion Picture, and we've managed to put it in episodes all over the place, whether it be a picture on a wall or, it became kind of legendary at a certain point. But I wanted to get that ring ship design in there. And now the funny thing is that we're seeing articles in science magazines and stuff about possible warp ships that use a ring just like that. And you're like, what, was Matt Jeffries from another planet?
I noticed something, too, about ship design that you might have done subconsciously. I noticed that the Vulcan is very pointed front, back, and at the bottom, like their ears.
Well,
and the Enterprise has a rounded saucer, rounded bazaars,
round heads,
like our rounded ears.
Yeah, our rounded ears. Hey, that actually did. I took every little cue about the Vulcans and used it. When Dorothy saw the Vulcan ship the first time, she said, "Pointy, pointy, anointy, anointy." I remember that's the first thing she said. And so it's pointy, just like it may sound silly, but these are subliminal things that register with people.
And another potential design you had, which I think obviously foreshadows the Great Sphere in craft like Daedalus and Future Pasteur class, which was also inspired off Matt Jeffries' design, called the USS Independence. And that was way back in TOS production as an original concept.
He was delighted, however, when Rick Berman and Brandon Braga greenlit the more exotic design, which he actually preferred.
Yeah, the word came back that Brandon Braga loved it. Herman came back and said, Braga loved it.
That's awesome.
And I was like, wow, thank goodness. Isn't that wonderful? Because we often, listen, you win a few, you lose a few. We tried to get the Botany Bay style ships into that universe, and they wouldn't go for it. They thought it looked like a pencil. So they didn't want it.
Well, that's it for part 1. Check out part 2, where we look at some of the other elements of the Zurich design, ask the question, how does it land? And of course, versus. See you next time.